Anyway, I'm going to adjust the drill press now. Obviously this drill bit would never fit in there, so I got to adjust it down far enough so I can get the drill bit in, number one, and number two is just have some room to work on the piece. You notice I have not tightened the table down yet because I still want to move it around a little bit. Okay, leave that the way it is, that's about lined up. Now I'll tighten this up again. There, that's good. Now it's real tempting to get underneath here, and I do this from time to time, and it's not the right thing to do. Not even when the drill bits, this should never be running, number one, but if you do this, this has got a really sharp little tip, and I've cut myself across the top of the finger because I've been stupid and gone underneath there. You really should use a brush, okay, or blow it, just blow it off. So it's very tempting again to remove stock from here. But you just got to avoid doing that kind of thing. So anyway, these are already been punched. So now this counter bore for the 1-inch handle, this is a 1-inch drill bit. Mr. Sopier had it in here, somebody might have donated it or maybe he bought it. But a lot of electricians use like a 1-inch diameter hole, and I know how to sharpen drill bits, so it was extremely dull. So I sharpened it up and the thing cuts beautifully, makes a beautiful chip. So a couple things to consider. Safety number one, how am I going to make the cut? Sleeve should be up. But a 1-inch drill bit does not have to run at 2,000 RPMs. You probably want to run that at closer to 1,200 RPMs, give or take. It's just wood, but the surface feed goes way up. So about 1,000 RPMs. Let's see here. 1630, 1440. It's either 1440 or 870. I think it's wood, so I'm going to go with the 1440. So let's see where we're at here. Okay, bring this forward. I already loosened that nut up, the fly nut. I'm going to take this belt off. See how I took it off this side, not this side. If you try to take it off on the high side, it ain't going to come off. But you take it off on the side where it's smaller diameter up here, it comes off a lot easier. So the same thing over here, I'm going to take it off this end. And then you replace the belts in the proper spot for 1440. So this one will go here. Actually put it on the middle one first. So that's on the back belt, that's the second from the top. And then the top one goes on here. Tighten that back up. Okay, and then you set depth. So it's the way we set depth on a counter bore. So you just start the machine, keep your hands out of the way. I made the punch, so now it's just going to come down, it's going to find that punch. I'm going to slide over. Just touching off. I'm going to make that about a 1/2 inch deep. So it's a 1/2 inch, so right now we're reading at about 11/16. So 11, 5, 6, 3. I'll be at 1 3/16. Some scales are this way, but I usually just line my eye up the best I can. And then to double check it, I'll measure between the bottom of the nut and I'll lock it in position here. You just check it with your tape measure, and that's very close to a 1/2 inch. I just let my tape measure stop. Whoops. So now I'm going to put this down, set that up. I'm ready to cut, or drill I should say, on my counter bore. I made the mark on the wrong side, so I thought I was going to hit it there, but I didn't. So anyway, there's our counter bore, 1/2 inch deep. So I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Find it. 1-inch hole, counter bore to 1/2 inch deep. I'm gonna set up for a 3/16. I should get a bench brush for here. I hate having, I'm just gonna go grab a bench. I hate having chips on my table. So just, brush is a very safe way to get underneath there. Now if you're in a high production area, you're going to see a lot of guys with brushes hanging right next to the machine where it's really easy to grab, because every time they load a piece, they're going to take the chips off and they don't shut off the machine, unless it's a long setup to get the part back in there. But the other thing they have is just a garbage can nearby so you can get rid of your garbage. All right, so now we're going to put in a 3/16 drill bit. High-speed steel is a beautiful thing. Let's see here, where is it? I think it's this one. It's got some chips and dust on it, so it's got to be the 3/16. We don't use the ones surrounding very often. We're going to pull that 1-inch bit out. It's going to be substantially longer than our 3/16 drill bit, so we're going to have to adjust the table again, which is just fine. There we go. Looks good. Oh my god, let's just adjust the table up a little bit because it's sitting pretty far down. Bring that out. It's about perfect, so then we'll tighten it. Okay, and we have our marks, so let's go ahead, get these drilled. Oh, we got to change the speed, don't we, and the depth. That's a little bit, there, adjust the stops, and we want to put it up to a couple thousand RPMs again. Let's try 2380. That's easiest because the top belt just stays put, and we drop this one down one level. So let's just do that quick here. So that one is on. Come on, you, get on there. Get that one on. And then tighten it. That should be correct. Set the lid. Everything is set. Looks good. So we'll let it bind it again. The drill wants to walk. I don't know why. It's a really sharp bit. All right. Clean workstation is a safe workstation. That kind of stuff a lot, don't you? Like all the chips on the floor. You see pros, people that are working on machines all the time. I'll get tired of walking on stuff eventually and they'll sweep it up. This is about my limit right here. I wouldn't want to be, I've done it, but it's just like, it's usually when I'm in a little bit too much of a rush. But anyway, okay, we've got that done, and now we're going to route this top, these inside edges a little bit. The 1/4 inch round over, the same one we had in there before, and then we'll be ready to put Humpty Dumpty together. So. Oh, we got some routing to do. We forgot that. We got to have our dados. So let's do our dados first. Well, we're going to reset up now. I think we'll do the 1/4 inch round over first. We're just going to do that on a portion of it. Technically it's called a stop route. And so we'll do the stop routes. There's one on this contour and this contour. And you do those so that it just makes a nice rounded edge, and it adds a little decoration, and you know, if you bump your leg on it or something, it doesn't hurt. So anyway, that's what we're going to do next. So we'll set up for that 1/4 inch round, and I still have it right here. So we'll go ahead and reset up quick here. I gotta drop this down. Hopefully I can get it underneath that insert, because otherwise it's really hard to get out of there. I like to say that it's really the best way to do it. Yeah, see, I can't get it down far enough to get that in there. I wonder if I can just tap up from the inside here. I want to do this without damaging the bit. I took the whole thing out. That's all right. It'll work that way. I'll just put it back together after I'm done here. Now we bring it up until it's about even, so we can get in there easy with our wrenches. Put our wrenches on. And use the one-hand method so we don't knuckle bust. You want to be careful around these edges too. They're razor sharp, so you just want to make sure you don't cut yourself. Okay, we have our holder. We always try to keep the holder and the bit over the same surface, so if you drop the router bit, you don't drop it all the way to the floor. This carbide is really, really hard, but it's like glass, and if you drop it, it could shatter. So you want to make sure and keep that over the top of the table. And they're expensive. You don't want to break any bits unnecessarily, and holding it over the table is a very simple way to make sure that doesn't happen. Put the cover back on. I would take the 1/4 inch round over and put it back in. So I buy this could easily take a 1/4 inch shank, but for not having to change the collets out, I prefer to I buy almost all 1/2 inch shanks anymore. It just saves a little bit of time. So, and a lot of them come standard with a 1/2 inch shank, so it's just a lot easier to do that. So when you're tightening, it doesn't have that same, you don't have to come up against the snap ring. All you have to do is come up against the, you just bring it down tight against it, and then it'll tighten up around the taper. So now we're going to insert this whole thing. Now this has like little buttons, and you have to align those buttons with the side pieces here. It could be called a lug. Probably this is more of a button, I would say. Lug is like what you hang something on a tractor, but you want to get those aligned on those. And you just do that and turn it until it falls into the lug. Like right there, it doesn't want to turn, but if you put it anywhere else, it'll turn a little bit. Not easily. But if you don't get that aligned, it will stick and not go in right. Then you just tap it in. Take the cover off, and you'll notice that when we were routing before, we always aligned this to the bearing. We're not doing that on this because we're just contouring, and when you contour, you have to go inside this radius, and obviously it's not going in a straight line. You have to follow the router bit. That's what this bearing is really good for. So anyway, now I'll adjust that to the top. Get it lined up. We have a little piece of wood here we use for doing that. I'm just turning the bottom so I don't cut myself in the bit. Okay, it's got to come up. There we go, that's pretty good. We'll double check that when we, you just do a little section just to make sure that you're not making a fingernail on there, because we're just running a round over right now. So I am going to roll up my sleeves and put in my hearing protection. I haven't got much left, so I got to save what I got. too many years of being with loud machines and not wearing hearing protection, and I don't want you kids to get dinged like I was young in life. So when you're doing a stop route, I will tell you this before I put my hearing protection, get everything going. You want to just come off real smooth off the cut and not go around. If you put too much pressure against the bearing, you're going to want to roll around that edge, and that's not what you want. You want to just do this contour and that's it. I'll show you after I'm done. But it'll be just a second to get my stuff put together. I got to plug in the machines. That one's ready to go. Okay, our hand positions are always the same. You want to, if possible, keep your fingers curled up. And it's real tempting to grab an edge, and sometimes you have to. But if you can avoid having it in a line where you're pushing, like I wouldn't want to be pushing like this with my hand here. Because if it comes off that edge or something happens, you can run your fingers through the router, and that's painful. We want to avoid that. So always try to stay perpendicular to the cut, away from the cut. Okay, so you're going to watch my hands, how I do it as I maneuver through the piece of wood. So we're going to get started here. Okay, you can see that the route, it's nice and smooth now. It's just the way it should feel, very nice. You know, just have to a little bit of light sanding to do on that, it'll be just perfect. So that's what we're looking to do there. Okay, so now the next thing is we're going to make some stop routes, but we have to make a pocket in the end panels, and we can cut all the way through on our B's. So on the A's, we have to do a stop route. We want to do it on the same side where our hole is. Here, I'll get my earplugs out so I don't holler at you guys. So we'd want the stop route here, and I can lay that out for you. I don't think it's necessary, I guess. But anyway, that's what we're going to do. You'll see how I set up. We're going to set up for 3/8 of an inch deep and a 1/2 inch to the bottom, so that the actual top of the slot will be at 3/4. The bottom of the slot will be a 1/2 inch from the edge. So we're going to use just a slightly oversized 1/4 inch bit, and that'll allow for that panel in the bottom to just move around just a little bit inside that slot. So now we're going to have to, this is supposed to be a shank on this one, so we got to change our pallets. This isn't no big deal. Just unscrew it and put the other one on. Alright, we got that. We're going to pop. Come up against the staff ring and pop the bit loose. And that allows us to take that out. We will put it right away into our holder so we don't drop it or damage it. Oh, on the end here it shows you can either do the round over. See how it's just a round over here? Or if you look right at the top here, I'll use my pencil, it's got a little finer tip. See right here? That's called a fingernail. Right there, that little vertical line. So that's just an additional little thing you can do with the most roundovers. So anyway, we're going to put in this bit. Like I say, it's just over 1/4 inches. Actually, this is a 5/16 inch bit. I've measured that material, and it's exactly a 1/4 inch or just a little over. So I'm thinking that having this 1/4 inch bit is the way to go, because otherwise if you have a little bit of misalignment, it can cause you some issues. Tight in there now. I'm trying not to cut myself. It's a newer bit, so gotta be a little careful. So you just take and unscrew the 1/2 inch collet, put it right back on our pegboard, and then rethread the 1/4 inch collet, and you put the bit in. Now remember, it's 1/4 inch shank, so you want to have it about a 1/4 inch from the actual cutting lines for the cutting surfaces of the bit. Low diameter, that seems to be a good rule of thumb. That's nice and tight. We'll pop this. See, there's no lugs on this. It's just nice and smooth, so it doesn't. This one does not have to be oriented. The red one has like 3 holes in it, and that's probably for some type of little gadget you can attach to the top. But I don't know. I don't know what you do with that, to be honest with you. Nothing that I've used in the past, but these tool manufacturers, they're very creative the way they build things. So the holder back on the bench, and now we're ready to cut. So let's see here. I gotta grab a square. This is what I'm looking for. We want to cut 3/8 of an inch deep. So you just what you do is you loosen, and it's called a beam. You loosen the thumb screw and bring the beam down until it's flat down on the surface. And you know, anything you measure here is going to be the distance from the surface that far up. So we're just going to adjust that 3/8 of an inch, because we want to have 3/8 inch deep cuts. It's very close right there, I'd say. Maybe just a tiny bit over, but that's fine. If we're within, well, you can probably do it more accurately than you expect, but I expect you probably get it within 10 thousandths pretty easy, even not necessarily knowing what you're doing. This scale is marked on 30 seconds. So, and that's something we haven't worked on, is measuring. We've got to keep working on that, because I know there's quite a few you don't know how to measure. So, anyway, then we loosen these back up again, bring it forward, and before that I should have just moved those in. See how far apart they are right here? They should actually be much closer together for this little cutter. So we loosen up these pieces of wood, and it allows them to slide a little bit closer to center. And you probably want them almost all the way over. They only go so far, so you just want to bring them pretty much all the way in. And that does affect the way the vacuum works a little bit, but it's more critical to have it so that your piece doesn't fall inside there. So slide that back and forth, and then right now the cutters are not lined up, so there's 2 cutting surfaces. And so if I had the cutting surface like this, I'm not really measuring the distance between the fence and the cutting surface. So the way it's oriented right now, I'd want one cutting surface to be here and one here. That way when I measure across, I measure the distance with the square from there to the back edge of that cutter. I want it to be about a 1/2 inch. Remembering that this is a 5/16. You could be a little bit under a 1/2 inch and be just fine. So I'm going to line those 2 teeth up. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'll line this up till it's probably just about maybe a 32nd under a 1/2. That's very close right there. Again, setups are probably the longest part. You know, I'll spend 10 minutes setting up a machine, and then you machine for about 5 minutes and you're done. And so a lot of times the setups are the most expensive part of building something. Looks real good. So it won't be exactly a 1/2 inch, but again, for the toolbox, it's going to be just fine. Okay. Now what we're doing is we're going to be doing a stop route. So we want to stop. This is somewhere where I could probably do some explanation, but because of the radius, we want to stop from this surface. We want 3/8 over from the bottom, but that's without a radius. So you want to take an additional 1/8 inch. So it should really be about 1/4 inch from the edge. That actually requires quite a bit of accuracy on our part to get this lined up. So remember how I said I wanted one cutting edge here and one cutting edge here? Now I just turn it so the cutting edges are like that. And I'll use a square again to mark where I am in relationship to the cutter. As long as you're gentle, you can gently set the tool, the measuring tool, against the cutter. You just can't get real aggressive. So this one here, be 1/4 inch away. I'll probably do a brief explanation over on the board after I'm done setting this up. So it's right on this edge. That's 1/4 inch away. So I know that when I stop feeding it through, I got to stop right here and then lift the material out. The other approach is to come the other direction, and I actually have it marked on a piece of tape here. Maybe I should just use that. Anyway, it brings me over so far and then makes me stop, and then I stop on that mark. See the marks right here on the tape? That's also a different, it's actually a good way to do it. So one thing is then we got to see how the tape is coming up. If the tape comes up, then you're out of luck again. But see, in this distance right here, if you can't make a mark here and figure out exactly where you are, that's where the tape would come in. That way it allows you to work off the opposite side where you got a lot of space. So I think we will use the tape method on this one. So I might just put a new piece of tape on this side because it's torn off, and I'll make sure the other one is accurate. So tape is cheap. A piece of tape might be worth about a penny, and it can save you a world of hurt. We'll get it set up here. So our distance all the way across, less the 1/4 inch, will be, where's my tape measure? The stock is a 7 1/4. So the 7 1/4 inch stock, so we want to mark it off at 7 inches away from the opposite side. So again, I know that's right to this edge. I just did that one. So I'll make a light mark on the fence, and I'll put my tape on it. That way I'll know exactly where I'm at. If you go above, then I'll wear out the tape either. I'll just know that I'm going to stop at that mark. So you can see the mark pretty clearly through the tape. I'll do a very fast one. Right on. Over 7 inches. So that's right about here. So it is different what I'd mark on there. And then again, remember how that other square earlier, I don't always use the beam to mark on. I might sometimes mark on this. Well, this one comes right to the edge. See, if I go like this, I come right up to the surface and I can make a nice accurate mark. But if I go like this, see where the beam is? It's way out of way. It's a lot harder to make an accurate mark. So you want to use the tool when it's the most accurate. You just go like that, and I can make a nice accurate mark right on the tape. The other way, the other nice thing about using tape is when I'm done, see there's other marks on this on the fence. By having this tape on here, I'll be able to see exactly where I am. And when I'm done, I just pull the tape off and the lead mark comes with it. So that's another advantage of doing it that way. So now we're just going to verify the other one. Make sure it's right on 7. That one's a little short. So I'll just erase the mark on the tape and make a new mark. So 7 inches. Far side. And see, I'll let it slap again. Bad. And use that. Make your mark. Now I know where I'm going to be going to. So now the actual doing it, see I have the hole down because it's where the cut's going to be. I want the inside to be where the handle is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start shy of this mark and let it drop in. I'm going to go back and forth until it's flat. And once it's flat, then I will go all the way to my marks. Okay? So that's you. I won't be able to talk to you while I'm doing it, but you're just going to have to understand what I'm doing. So I'm going to put my earplugs in, start the machines, and do my stop routes. Okay, it's called a stop route because we didn't go all the way through the stock. We've stopped it at that point. We came a 1/4 inch away with this cutter. Like I say, I'll do an example up on the board. But we stopped short so that we'd have room for the radius there. So that's why we did that. There's ways around that. You can clip off the edge of the bottom panel and do a few things like that that are just not a big deal to do, but this is actually, since we're doing it, we might just as well do it this way. Now with the letter B's, that's the sides, we're going to do the routes, but they're going to go all the way through. And you'll see that here in just a minute. I'll go over and grab my B's and I'll send them through the router. And because we're using the same depth from here in, all of them should line up really well. So if you stop and do one setup and then the other and you come back, sometimes they don't line up as well. So anyway, let's go ahead and grab those other pieces and get that done. So now again, we look at the pieces, make sure we have the right letters. That'll keep you out of a whole bunch of trouble because the lids and the sides are almost identical in length. They're just an 1/8 inch change. So you got to make sure and look for the labels, otherwise you could get the wrong ones. So I'm going to look over the pieces and decide which side I want. This knot is nice and solid here. It looks like it's loosening up. See the real black lines here. So I'd be tempted to either put that, if you use it, actually the lid will probably help hold that in position, so I might even just put that on the inside bottom. So I'd actually roll it right across here. And the panel will actually hold that knot in place. So that's a good idea. And I like this side better because the knots are still real solid. So I'm going to put a mark that represents down. It's a caret mark. And that's all going to be inside of a panel, so that'll just all go away. I won't have to do anything with it. So put a caret mark, and that's going to represent down. And then this side, it's pretty clear. So I think we could go with either side on this one. It doesn't matter on that one. We don't, you know, if you have a side that matters, you put a caret mark, but then you got to remember to look for the caret mark when you go make the cut. So I'll probably just put a carat mark on it just so I'll look on them, both of them. So there we go. I set that one to the side. Now we're going to start the machine and do the same exact thing, keeping your hands out of the way, but instead of stopping at the marks, we're going to go all the way through. Plugged in. Turn that on. Where is it? Okay, let's see here. I think we're going to sand these off a little bit now. So I am going to give a brief explanation as far as why I did a stop route and the way I did it over at the whiteboard for 2 seconds, and then we'll sand them and get it together here. So see you in a second. I just had a question here a little bit ago from my producer, Don Schmidt. Why I went back. So I went through the stock, brought it back through, and it's just a little thing, a little quirk of mine. I like to get rid of the chips inside there, and when you do that kind of thing, did you notice on the end, on the ones where I made the stop cuts, I had to pick it out with a pencil? Well, when you do a side cut like this, it allows you to just go ahead and clean out all those chips in there. And I don't like to have chips, and it's messy, and I try to control my chips. Like, I try to leave as much as I can on the table when I sweep it off, so I don't have to bend over and pick it up or sweep it. And usually that allows me to do that kind of thing. But that's why I went through the cut, and I took it back through again. And so that's why I did that. I'm going to explain to you why we did the stop cut the way we did it on the router. So here's our end piece right here. I'm going to make it a little bit larger this time. There's our end piece. All right, and then we have that whole thing up there. So if you have a cut, so here's our cut. Actually, it's not there, is it? So we just have a cut in the end, like this. All right. And it's supposed to be 3/8 of an inch from this edge. Remember, 3/8 is the depth of our dados. Well, we have to compensate for that for the end cut, or the piece that comes out. So this is 3/8. Now, if you have a radius like this, so I'm going to draw that bigger. So we have this is our slot, just super big. So if this distance is our actual 3/8 of an inch in from the edge, but we're using a round cutter, so what it actually does is it makes a radius like this. Well, you can't get that panel all the way into the corners, so you either have to cut off the corners or notch it out a little bit on the corners so that it accepts that radius, or another approach is if we know that this is a 1/4 inch radius, 1/4 inch diameter, so it's an 1/8 inch radius. If we know that this is 1/8, all we have to do is move it over 1/8 of an inch, And we can get that nice square panel so it fits just nice, just like it is right now. And that's what we've done. So instead of having it 3/8, we have 1/4. Trying to do this backwards. There we go. Okay, and so that's why we brought it 1/4 inch from the edge, so it compensates for that radius. All right, just get these sanded up then. Essentially what I did was I just sanded the insides, and they're pretty good. They're not perfect. It's a toolbox, so most toolboxes get dinged up pretty fast, but the outside's probably got to be a little prettier than the inside. So I spend most of my time on the outside of the box. One thing I didn't sand is this bottom, and they'll never get another chance to sand it because you can't get all over the edges, so I'm just going to sand that, and then we'll start assembling stuff. So panel is, this is like more or less just a construction grade 1/4 inch plywood. So one side is going to be fairly smooth, the other side is going to be fairly rough. Obviously the nice smooth side you want to put inside the box, the rougher side on the bottom, because it's not going to be seen or felt. But I am still going to just touch it just because it's me, and I like to have fairly smooth surfaces to paint or do whatever I'm going to do. So. When we're doing the assembly, what I did for you guys is, because you can't be here and most people have a standard Phillips head driver or a Phillips screwdriver. It's about one of those. I found most people don't have square drivers. So I did buy a screwdriver, head screws for you to assemble with. If you have wood glue, I'll show you where to put it. If you don't have any wood glue, it'll probably just fine. These are big heavy duty screws, and they're going to more than hold this thing together. Unless you do something pretty funky, drop it off a truck at 6 miles an hour or something silly. Anyway, I'll just grab a couple of screws and a little bit of glue, and we'll get this thing put together. Oh, there is one thing with the handle. Most of the time they're pretty smooth. This one's actually really nice. And we still got to do a dry fit, but we'll do that here in a little bit. But just going to make sure that the dowel rod fits in there. Because after you get the glue started and stuff, you want to start messing with the dowel rod at that point, because if you have to sand them a little bit to get them in the hole, you want to be able to do that ahead of time. But it looks like it's going to fit together just beautifully. So I'll get the last things together, and we'll put this toolbox together. Kind of get things lined up so that we're ready to go. So this is the bottom. I'll make sure I put the sanded side up. Fits very nicely into that groove, by the way. That's the way I'd hoped. And there's a little bit of room for it to move, which we planned on. Well, I'm going to tip this up. Sometimes it's a lot easier to assemble things panel upwards. So you go like that. And I got to remember too that this bottom might be too big. I might have to rip all these bottoms down a little bit smaller. And it looks like that is exactly what I'm going to have to do. I must never have changed it on my drawing. What I think I did was I came up with 7 1/2 as my actual dimension. And instead of adding, instead of subtracting, I added 1/8 of an inch. And that is exactly the width I'm thinking I'm over. So actually I have to go 1/4 inch smaller than whatever this is, probably. So I'm going to have to rip that down, and it'll just take a second, but that's why we dry fit. Dry fit, you get everything figured out, make sure it fits ahead of time, and then when you come back to assemble it, everything just goes together. So I'm going to go over and get the table saw going and just rip that quick, and then we'll be ready to go. The right mark should have been 6 1/2. I added 1/8 instead of subtracting. So now I've actually got to take off almost 1/4 inch of material here. So instead of 6 5/8, it's going to be 6 3/8. I'm kind of picky about my machine, so if you set the saw to whatever's on the scale, that's exactly what it's going to cut. A lot of guys that have older saws or saws that are just not real accurate, they actually have to measure between the blade and the fence to get their measurements dead on. And actually this one, I must not have recalibrated that. I'm just going to make it a little bit big, and if it's a little big, I can still make it smaller. Once it's too small, it's too small. You're kind of stuck. So anyway, I'm ready to cut, so I'll cut this, and I'll measure and make sure it's right. And then I might have to recalibrate the saw, but I'll do that another time. So let's give her a shot. Okay, it does have to be calibrated. I did have to adjust the saw fence here recently, so I must not have recalibrated it. So that has to be done, but it's exactly 6 3/8 right now. And if you notice when I cut on the saw, I wasn't standing here. And it should be pretty obvious where it's going to hit. If it comes out the back of the saw, it's going to hit me in a bad spot right there. We don't want to ever have a kickback. But if you do have a kickback, if you're over here and it kicks back, it's going to end up over there somewhere. I've seen a stick of plywood or just a piece of lumber fly back and hit something like that and knock a hole right through the wall. So kickbacks they happen, even to the best of us. So the best way to prepare for that is to stand off to the side and then make sure nobody's standing back behind you when you're making the cut. If you have somebody back there, you got to stop the cut, shut off the saw, and wait for them to get out of there. It's extremely dangerous to walk behind a table saw when you've got it operating. So hopefully by this time next year, we'll have a saw stop, and it's one of the latest and greatest saws out on the market. So if we're able to somehow get a saw stop for next year, which I think we'll be able to, we'll be well on our way to being much safer in the shop. But that doesn't protect you against the kickback. Kickbacks are always going to be a problem, and you've got to pay attention to what you're doing. If you watched me make the cut, I stood off to the side and I watched the cut all the way through the stop. I kept my hand against the fence. See how my finger is hooked up here on the fence? Now if I was to, then you pull it off the back, see I'm still not standing behind, but then I slide my hand back with my little finger hooked on the saw, okay? That's the only way to do it, and you've got to be about 5 or 6 inches wide. If you're this close to the saw blade, you're not using your hand anymore. You don't want to go any less than about 4 inches. That's about 4 inches right here. Still use your hand safely as long as you keep it tucked up against the fence and away from the guard. But once you get narrow like that, next year I'll have a real nice stick. You're just going to start the cut with your hands. You feed it through, and when you get to near the end, you hold it in place with this hand, and then you use the stick and push it through all the way. It's got to go all the way through past the blade, otherwise it can still kick back. And you're going to have a table or something back here, a stock support, to hold the stock on the back side of the saw. Okay? Table saws are probably one of the most used saws in the whole shop. That's why we're going through this training session. But if you don't have one, it really throws you in a bind. But when you do have one, you've got to be respectful of it, or else it's going to bite you, and they're not nice. You can scream all you want, and it's just going to keep cutting you. So you have to do as I tell you to do, or else there's going to be a boo-boo coming down the line, and that could jeopardize the whole shop area. So we're not going to do that. So anyway, now let's go assemble the box. All right, so we want to have the smooth side up. So the smooth side goes inside the box. All right, we'll do that. It's okay if that just sits there. We're going to put 2 light beads of glue. And where we're going to put that is between the holes. We only want to have about 3 inches of glue in there and just a little light bead. Okay, just about like that long, about 3 inches give or take. Right, make sure it's pretty dust free. With a light bead like that. Now we're going to start assembling the sides. Doesn't matter end for end which one. It's just got to be one of the letter B's. You're going to put that piece in. And you're going to that little bottom piece will stand up with it. Going to keep everything kind of lined up here a little bit. Now we're going to put in the other side. Start out above and then you slide it down in the slot. That way it just comes in contact with that glue just nice. There. See how our bottom is sticking up just a little bit? That piece is going to fit inside there, and that's what's going to keep it encapsulated. Oh, we got to put our handle in too. That'd be a bummer to put this all together and forget our handle. We'd have to do something funky then. We don't want to have to do that. Okay, then we go like this. Bring that down. We're going to assemble this. Oh, it's together just beautifully. Beautiful! Alright, now we're going to put some screws in. Now if you see some places where it's got to be sanded on the outside of the box, and that is just fine at this point. Because we're going to take care of all that sanding. As long as it's on the outside or these little radiuses here and stuff like that, we're going to get to it. Just sometimes it's nice to get some of the stuff assembled and then sand it when it's all together. So now, I don't know if you can see it, but I flushed up the side to the end, so now it's flush right here where the screw is going in. Doesn't matter where this one is yet. I'll just push it in when I get ready to do that one. You just do one at a time. Get it screwed in. Oh, it's in reverse. Just bring the screw in until it's flush. And I know there's a few of you that are kind of perfectionists here. And lumber is not perfect. And you might end up with some lumber that isn't perfect. And you just got to remember, it's kind of the nature of the wood. Doesn't mean it's not going to hold up for 20 years. Just means that God decided to make that tree a little crooked or something and give it a little character. And there really shouldn't be a problem with that because God knows exactly what He's doing. And just make that nice and flush. What I'm trying to do there just by backing it out to give me an opportunity to just flush it up a little bit. The other thing is these boxes, like our stools, they may not come out perfectly flat on the bottom because if the wood isn't cut perfectly or if these ends are twisted a little bit, which can easily happen, the box may rock a little bit. Again, you're just going to put your glasses in here and it's a toolbox. You'll be able to keep stuff in there, it'll keep it safe, and that's what you really need at this point. So it's going to cover your needs, and that's what we need to do. Okay. That one is, we're going to switch ends and do the same thing over again on this end. I'm actually having a blast building this box. I love building little things like this. Compared to working for 2 or 3 weeks on a single cabinet, be able to build a whole box in just a few hours, something very satisfying for me in that. Hopefully you guys will have a bunch of fun building this thing too. It's always nice to be able to build something you're going to use. You notice I'm not just jamming it in there. You're putting the screws in, just take your time, let the screw cut. Sometimes you cut too fast with the screw and it'll actually crack the wood. So you want to just take your time and enjoy it. Enjoy the process of putting something together. You've worked so hard to make all your cuts good and sand it. Enjoy the moment. Just enjoy it. There we go. I thought I'd noticed a little bit of a rock earlier. That's actually really nice. I love it. So anyway, that's absolutely beautiful. So let's do a little bit more sanding. I'll sand these edges off a little bit. Maybe even just by hand around the edges on everything, make sure everything is kind of nice. And then I'll sand the lid real good, and I'll assemble the lid, and then see if it opens and closes. We might have one more little place to route, just so we can get our fingers underneath it, but that won't take too long. So, well, let's get her done. Let's see here, I was going to hand sand some of this. Yeah, I can get that in there. Sand these edges and all these sharp corners. Sanded corners can be extremely sharp. You want to make sure and just get all the corners pretty good. Make sure that to round it off. If you just slip around anything like this, you haven't sanded it enough. Once that you get a sliver on, or you shouldn't even feel smooth. By tilting like this, it gives my knuckles a place to be. If you try to do it flat, it's a lot harder. So, these two, I want to get everything real sharp. And I would love to see you guys actually be able to paint these or stain them, or if you put your names on the end, that'd be really cool. Maybe, you know, carve your name in or something. That'd be just really cool. So anyway, you just do a dry fit, make sure this lid is fitting just the way you think it should. And this looks, again, it looks really good. Got about a 1/16 on each end, which we compensated for with clearance. Remember that nice word, clearance? That'll probably be on a quiz, if it hasn't been already. And because clearance is a big deal. All right, everything is looking good. I'm going to go ahead and put a nice little route, probably on this corner right here, or maybe get away from that knot. I got screws that got to go in there. Yeah, I'm going to put it on this side. That way I can put my screws in. Knots are notorious. They're just very hard to get screws into without drilling. And I think I don't want to drill into a knot. So anyway, I'll put the little notch right here. So anyway, we'll go over the router and quick get that done, and then we can put the hinge on, and we'll be pretty much done with our box. We're going to have the knot side here. That's the side opposite the hinge. You'll just want to have that, you know, about 6 inches. So if it's roughly 9 inches to the center, because actually it's 19 inches, half 19 is 9.5. We'll mark off about 9.5 inches right there. Then I want the slot to be roughly 6 inches long. So you put the 3 there, right on the mark. Make a mark on this side. The other mark up at 6. Again, if it's not highly accurate, you're going to be fine. You just want to have it on there so you can have a place to put your fingers in, so you can open up and close the box without dropping it and stuff. So I'm just going ahead and watch on the back side, and I'm going to put the center of the bearing right on the line. And I'm going to start inside, and I'll work my way back until it's centered on there. It's got to be up about 1/4 inch because we're using a 1/4 inch round over. I'm marking very lightly because I'm going to have to sand or erase that off. So, okay, I'm going to make the cut. bit. See, that's just a real light burn. That's not going to hurt anything. If you went really slow, you're going to burn, and it makes this whole thing turn black. You got to sand all that off. And that's why once you start the cut, you want to keep cutting. I'm just erasing the lead marks. Probably hit it with a little sandpaper to make sure it's completely gone. But yeah, we're ready to put Humpty Dumpty together here, so let's go ahead and do that. Maybe I've already shown some here. See how it's got a hex on it? It's not round like you typically put. They would work in a drill press, but a hex like this, these impactors all have a hex driver. So the female end is hex and the male end is hex, and they're made to fit into each other. Okay? So to put it in, you don't have to pull the collar. It just slips in. But to pull it out, you have to pull the collar forward, and that allows you to remove the bit. Okay? We're going to do the same thing with this square driver. This time I'm going to put in this called a snappy bit. They also have a name brand called VIX, V-I-X. So I'm going to pull that out, put this one in. What this is going to do is it self-centers. So see that hole there? This fits right on the tip of that, and this drill bit will come right out through the tip. See that right there? See how the drill bit comes out from the tip? And this chamfer automatically centers the hinge. Very handy tool for putting screws in. Then also, I was going to say, as far as these are magnetic, so the screw will actually hang on to the end of this tip. It won't fall off typically, but this tip, you have to buy good quality tips, and I think this is the one I got from here, and it may not be the best quality, but it's going to work for what we're doing today. And I'm going to have you put in probably about 8 screws. When you get back to school next year, if you're coming back, the 8th graders obviously won't be coming back, but the 6th and 7th graders, we can finish putting screws, and I usually fill up all the holes, especially with piano hinges. It makes them more strong. The more screws you have, the more strength you get. Also, they have different colors, so if you get nickel screws with these brass hinges, they probably would, it just doesn't look quite right. So anyway, I'm going to line this up on my mark. I made that 1/2-inch mark on my end here. I don't know if you can see that. Here's the mark. So I'm going to put, I'm holding down the lid with my hand. I'm locating the hinge almost to the very top. Okay? You want to just slightly, the hinge should be slightly under flush. That looks like it's lining up just the way it should. And then you do one hole with that. So it might even be nice to have a clamp on it. Let's see if we can get that. Just have to get the hole started. And then, because it's pine, it'll take the screw real easy. Okay, so that one is in. Now I'm going to put one more down below. That'll actually help me hold it in position. It's the first one is always the hardest. I keep doing that. I just want to lay it down, as you can see. Okay, so you got that one done. Now we're going to put one at this end. Okay, you're holding the top of the hinge just down under flush a little bit. And because I already had those screws in and down, it just allows me to hold it so much tighter. Just works better. Then you can put this one in. And these will strip out extremely easily. So you're much better off just being real gentle. Especially with these impactors. You can set the clutch on a drill, but these don't have a clutch. And they'll easily strip. So then let's see here, 8 screws, that puts me there, there. Let's put in 10 screws instead. That way we'll get in every other for So like I say, you don't have to go all the way with pine. If it was oak or maple or really super hardwood, like white oak or whatever the case may be, you're going to want to go all the way in. Because, the screws will bind inside the wood and actually break off inside the wood. And boy, once you break off a screw, you're going to pay a price. So you want to do it real gentle, bring it up until it essentially touches. For pine, that's what you're going to get. Now, most of you may have to use and some of you may have to use a screwdriver. And you won't have a Vicks bit. A lot of times, what you do then is if you have a drill, you'll drill a little hole, just kind of set it in the hole the best you can, and then put the screw in by hand. Otherwise, you can just drive the screw in. Again, this is pine. You should be able to drive a screw into pine without having to do that. I mean, one more screw. I do have enough screws to go through all the holes in the hinge, but at this point, I don't know who's all got them and who does not, so I'm just gonna, at this time, just go with what we can. So there's your toolbox. Awesome. Thinking about putting a little chain over here, just to keep the lid from falling back all the way. You know, if you do that too often, it'll probably break the hinge eventually. That would be why to put it like a little chain down underneath the surface here to here. But we'll see. I don't know if I'll do that or not. For now, they're just fine. Maybe next year or something we'll do that. But one other quick usage you can use this for. I don't know. I wouldn't suggest doing this all the time, but in a pinch, you can use this like a ladder. It'll get you up a little bit. And if you don't do it real often, it'll be just fine. But if you're out on a job site and you just need to step on it, try to get all your weight on the edge. Try not to step in the middle because there's nothing supporting it, okay? But if you have to, that's a way to do that. Never use the handle. If you use the handle for a step, it's gonna break. And you'll say, oh, my handle broke. And I'll say, well, you did something you shouldn't have, right? Because this will never break no matter what you put in here as long as you do it like that. It can flex, it can move. It should, the chance of that breaking are very light. So, and that's your toolbox. So I'll be making kits up for you guys and sending them home again if you can paint them. And especially if you can just write your name on the end or something so it's legible through the finish, that'd be awesome. You know, so that's what I have for you, and hope you're having a really good spring.